Okay, good morning. I wanted to just do a quick video on my base image pipeline and possibly even mention a little bit about character development. I'm going to spend the next couple of weeks. I was going to do dialogue and try and force myself to go back to that, but after taking a little break, I've realised at the end of the 3 months, I tend to take a little break and kind of revisit, get my mind out of this work a bit. And I was off mucking around with Suno, which is pretty amazing and horrifying at the same time if you're a musician, which I am. But yeah, it's led me. I almost canned the next 3 months because I've noticed that all the model releases have dropped off. And sorry, it's really noisy here, but I'll keep going. Model releases have dropped off, but also nothing's really improving in the areas that really need it yet for what I need, which is really good human interaction and lip sync. And Seed Dance is really leading the way by quite a large margin at the moment, even though I'm not seeing people use it properly yet. I think they're probably in production for people who are going to do good things with it, because it still takes a lot of time. Image editing is king. It absolutely is still. And what I'm finding is the better the models get and the better everything gets, the longer I have to spend editing images, which I hate. So I've kind of been challenged by that. But anyway, rather than start another long waffle, I'm basically just going to go today quickly as I can, which usually takes a long time, through the recently uploaded to my website Workflows number 2, which was the updated version on Workflows number 1, which is the base image pipeline set. And you'll notice here I'm not going to keep updating all these because it's just been taking too much time. So all I'm going to update, I'll update regularly to the Patreon, which is purely free now. If you want to donate, then buy me a coffee, I'd love that. But otherwise I'm just going to keep it all free. It's too complicated trying to figure out payment terms. But yeah, on the website, I'm only really going to update base image pipeline and video pipeline on any kind of regular basis, but I'll be posting more straight to the Patreon, so better following me there. But today, the image pipeline I want to talk about is Workflows 2, which I just uploaded a couple of days back, yesterday in fact, and how I use it currently. So let's switch over and think about this, because where do I begin? I've just recently started this idea for a music video. I'm going with a music video for a bunch of reasons I won't get into now, rather than dialogue, which I said I would. I'll probably jump over to doing some dialogue, but like I said, I'm kind of feeling a little bit like it's not there yet and needs a pause, but we'll come back to that. I've not updated Comfy UI recently. There's been a lot of issues with Comfy UI of late, and I've seen people having to downgrade the manager to make it work. Unfortunately, I'm probably going to have to do it today because there's a few extra things I need to test out before I get going on this idea. But yeah, if you guys are struggling with Comfy UI at the moment, updates, try downgrading to the Comfy UI manager. I've heard that it helps, but I've not actually had to try it yet. But yeah, I'll let you know in a day's time. So this is I start with the T to V, and this is the one I posted on Reddit yesterday about, and I think I spoke to you guys about, and I was saving talking to you about it for this video. But this is this is one thing I adapted from the original one in here, where I didn't even have that. But yeah, it's a 2 sampler pass, and this is really good. I really like Z image, and I use the turbo currently, but I might actually switch out to use the bass for the first part of this. But it's a 2 sampler workflow. There's the first one, then the image gets upscaled by 6, and then runs through the final sampler to get the result. And let's actually just run this. I'll just run that while we're talking. I love Z image. It's got a really nice aesthetic, and it I love every opportunity to go to the text to I put T to V, but it's actually T to I, isn't it? So that's all wrong, but I'm a bit slapdash like that. This came from, if you look at my Reddit post today about it, you can pause the video and find it. I put this post out yesterday, 17 hours ago. Z image using a 2 sampler setup is the way. I got this idea originally from a guy called Major Specific. Someone pointed that out, which thankfully, because I'd kind of forgotten who I got it off. And I was using this trick. It's basically going, let's talk about it here. Create your first structure really small, like look at that, 288 by 128. So I'm doing this as that widescreen 2.39 ratio to 1 aspect ratio, which is really widescreen. I prefer it to 16:9 ratio. It feels more cinematic, and also interestingly, sorry about the racket at the building site I live on. Interestingly, it finishes faster than 16:9 aspect ratio, which would be 288 by 160, so you can understand why, and without too much of a negative impact. So look at that. So the first, what you get, and this is a trick I discovered. I didn't discover it, but people were starting to cotton onto with Qwen, with the dual model system. So what you do is you do your first, you go through the first sampler at a really small size. And what the first sampler does is creates the structure. So you want that at 1D noise, and you know, I've faffed around with these, but you want the config high as well, because then it's going to spend more time on it. But because it's small, it'll do it quicker. So, you know, this is done on a 3060 low VRAM in seconds, and look at the quality. That's pretty good, and you know, that's only at 178, so I could shove that through seed. You get some weird things sometimes, but the quality's there. It's good. You do get odd problems with hands and fingers and sometimes legs missing even, but I think that's just Z image nature, because it's turbo maybe. Now someone has suggested putting the base model through the first one, and then there's turbo for the second one. So there's all sorts of extra little tweaks and tricks. I've also seen a guy use 7 here, and I'm just going to try that and see what happens. So what else can I say about this thing? Now, the other thing about config and why config 1 will be fast, config 7 will probably be literally 7 times slower. That was one of the issues with config, and one of the problems that happens is when you use config 1, yes, it's fast, but it doesn't work with the negative prompts, and that's where the nag came about from KidJai, if you know about it. But in this level, with Z image being so super fast, you don't really need to worry about it. And also, the negative happens in the structural phase. He's changed shape already. You know, every time you change one thing, you get something new. I do have a static seed set here. So, yeah, I've got new things. I wouldn't say that's better. It's kind of gone more Wurzel with his leggings, whatever's going on there. Maybe the hands are better. You know, they take a bit more testing to find out. So let's switch it back to 4 and see if it looks exactly the same. It always fascinates me how much one little change can make so much difference. Like, how do you then come to conclusions about stuff? Yeah, see, it's going to do almost exactly the same image once I set it back to what it was. So the seed carries everything, but one little change, you know, config 4 to 7 can completely change what you're getting. It's it means you can have a perfect workflow, but because one thing is set wrong, it's the worst workflow. I think that happens with Qwen for me, but yeah, anyway, let's just finish watching that. So this is my initial one, and obviously you're not going to get the character you want, and yes, I could try, yeah, see, we're back to this original guy, so it pretty much looks exactly the same. While we're talking about that, let me just show you another useful thing. I think I've mentioned it before. I recommend getting this IFRAN view 64-bit if you're on Windows. I've found it a very useful tool for checking. There's one, there's the other. It's virtually exactly the same, so you can do a second run with the same seed, but if you change any little configuration, you get completely different things. So that is the same as that, isn't it? I don't think anything's different there. Yeah, IFRAN view's got some really funky stuff. Like, if you get into batch processing, which I'm going to go back to shortly, and you need to batch process a bunch of images to be the same size or change their structure in some way, like, you know, what they are. If RAM view's what you want and it's a free tool, brilliant. So yeah, I've showed you that info too. So anyway, this was the text to image, Z image version. I don't use any extras in this. No, there's nothing much to it. I've got all these settings, and if you mess with these settings or mess with the schedulers, you get very different results as well. And also I was trying all the different upscalers, and none of them worked as well as that one. But I actually had problems with upscalers. To summarize this method, you are going small and fast size for the first sampler. Happens quickly. You can use this with WAN. I use it with LTX, you know. Then you upscale in latent space, so you're not coming out into image space, you're staying in there, and you upscale. I've never done it by 6 before. That was kind of wild. Usually it's 2. In WAN 2.2 we were doing 2, just doubling it, but it worked. I just had problems with different upscalers at the time, but then LTX came along and I didn't need to look at it anymore. And then for the last sampler, you're really not a full denoise, because you want to keep the structure you've got with the value of the structure here, but just, you know, add enough that it's adding detail. So you're going structure, detail. That's what's happening there. Some people will use a third sampler, but really what they're just adding is likely very low denoise to fix minor things. And you do get issues with this where it will do weird things with hands and stuff. But just change the seed. That usually fixes it for me. Anyway, I absolutely love Z-Image. It's my favourite model so far for image creation. So what the next problem is, like, well, great, but this isn't the guy I need. And this was the problem you were seeing in all my videos, where I've just gone, oh, well, I'll work out who I want to use later. Now I need to start paying more attention to that. So let's talk about how I do that. But first, let me just show you the other. This I'll come to that after. Let me go to Qwen next. So let's say I've got this guy. I've done this picture in Z-Image, and yeah, that's the shot I want, and yeah, that's the body I want, but the face was wrong. So what do? Okay. So what I really like Qwen, but it's a really slow thing. And what I'll do is I'll first get a face like this guy. In fact, let's use that guy. Let's just do it. This is the Qwen swap out, I call it, but I've just kind of adapted it to be usable for certain things. I've got a camera angle here that I can bypass when I need to, and then I plug that into the prompt is what that's for. Because you can then add prompting there, or it uses the prompting from the camera angle, and that works pretty well to get me new camera angles when I need them. I sometimes have to change the seed. Pretty much nothing else in here I change ever. Actually, that's not true. One thing I do sometimes change is CFG, but usually I keep it at 1. I don't get great quality out of Qwen because it takes too long, but I do get good structural results. I'm going to be testing it with pose soon because I need that for this video. But so we've got this face here, so I'll find a basic face of someone, and then I'll go, oh, and he's even pulled him up, so here we go. So what I'll do is I'll find an image of someone I like the look of, and I want this skinhead guy. I don't want Ewan McGregor, I don't care, but I want this kind of pasty young 20-something skinhead, because it suits the character I want to use and create. And this time I'm being a bit stricter with myself. I'm setting the character from the beginning, and then I using the man in image 1, make a colour passport photo of a 20-year-old skinhead looking at the camera, neutral expression. And so that then gives me this guy, and that's close enough. It still looks like him a bit, but I don't care. But you get this kind of like bad pasting look, and it looks terrible. So what I then do is, once I've got the look I want, I'll load Mr. Qwen pasty, almost Ewan McGregor, but hit the spot. I haven't taken the background out at this stage, but it's given me the passport photo. And this is all you really need, in my opinion, to create characters. It's the fastest way, given image is king, image editing is king, and we have to use it still. I don't do LoRa training. I don't see the point, because you have to keep training LoRa's for every single model you use. What's the point of that? But anyway, and also the main reason actually is multi-characters can't handle multi-LoRa's. They'll bleed into each other. So this is actually currently the only way I know of to do decent characters. So now I'm going to give you the character process. But basically, I'll run this through the eye-to-eye Z-image ab realism workflow, which is what this one is. Now I've got these disabled because sometimes I need this to do the same thing as we had before, which is that double sampler thing, and it works really well. I just don't use it so much because you've already got the structure here. I also don't tend to change the size. I'll work at 1024 initially, because by the time I shove it into pictures, it's going to be so small anyway, you won't know the difference. Denoise I set about 0.2. I start with Euler beta, but I sometimes have to go to simple scheduler because beta can sometimes add those weird textures to things, like those bitty things on the trousers you saw. And then I'll just run it through. So this is an image to image run. I fix the seed. If I need to change it, I change it. I don't do any of this, so it's just basically getting a low denoise, and this will fix up the face without changing him too much, and it'll do it pretty quickly at 1024. I could increase the size there. I've got that in there, but I don't bother. There you go. So you can see vast improvements with Z-image. Just adding the realism in, a low denoise setting of 02 with those two. I mean, how much better do you need it? I don't know. I don't need it any better than that. So that done. So what I then do is I'll make the background image I want, define it using the T2I, the Z image T2I, or whatever, any model you want. And then when I've got that, I'll go, right, well, I now need to change this guy. And the way I do that is trust the old critter. And this is a process I'm now going to be using. I've used it a bit, but hadn't really bothered with my videos till now. So what I basically do is then open the shot. I'll remove the background. You could do that in Critter 2. Usually quite simply, and then put in a background here, white background. Fill that with white, deselect it all, make a new layer from all visible, select all, edit, copy, and then, you know, it's not even that high quality there, but to be honest, it's add a new layer, edit, paste into active layer. Oh, it's because it's so small, that's why. So yeah, I should really strictly use a better, higher quality initial shot. So I'd do that and then opacate, if that's a word, that, and then kind of fit him on there, get him roughly right. Doesn't even have to be that accurate, just the head size really. And then export that. That feels a bit wrong still, but then I'd export that out. Yeah, it was a bit too large. I'll export that out to a ping or whatever. And then this is a rather cool thing. It's in the notes on this, and where to get it, this fusion blend. You just use this to trigger that LoRa and, you know, correct the man's, I don't need his perspective correcting, so I'll just put lighting and integrate the man into the background. I mean, it's going to know what I'm talking about, but what's wonderful is it doesn't care. It actually helps that it's got this white square around his head. Now, this isn't fast by any means, and I tend to, especially when I do it at that size. So this will be 5 minutes or more waiting for that. But the result will be there you go. You can see the man I got originally, no good. And the result will be that. So it blends it in. I think I put some other wording in there because I want this kind of golden, this dawn sunlight on him, and I think that set that off. So yeah, it'll give me, I mean, that's not perfect quality, but it's good enough. Seed VR2 will take any image and upscale it. I'm not a big fan of the results because it tends to make them a little bit too sharp, and I'm a bit more, that's why I like LTX, because it makes things a little bit smoother, cinematic, but the size is amazing, so you can then use it, you know, 4K back down. The other thing I just wanted to point out in this workflow is that. Now, if you're using multiple angled cameras, you need to undo that one. That I've never even used. I have no idea what I've got it for. It's in there just as a spare LoRa point if I need it. I'll probably actually use that today and load up a pose LoRa to test poses. BFS head, this is by that Allison XDR guy who does really good head swapping methods, and this works very well. I probably should have used it actually in here, and there's some info about using it there, the head swap method. I tend to change it to image one because I think that's the proper translation. He's Portuguese, and I think image one works better for this. I think it considers it image one because of the name in there, but who knows. Yeah, it's one way. So this is really for head swaps, pretty good, but because and for blending in, but this is my major one. It's best for blending in, but I always end up with slightly poor plastic results because Qwen 251 is like that, and takes too long for me to change that config to 4.5, remove the speed up LoRa, and wait a day for it to finish. That's getting back to May last year. That's how long you'd be waiting for small images. So that's that one, and yeah, that's pretty much the image pipeline for me, and how I get to consistent enough character that I can then drive a video from it, and hopefully be able to shove him in other places. Now what will have to happen next is I'll work initially from a single mugshot, like a passport photo with the background removed, and I'll use that. But what I'll then do is have to use that. Okay, so that finished. It took, on my 3060, 500 seconds. So that's using the Qwen. I'll put this in Patreon and upload it to my website next time I'm uploading stuff to the website. I thought I'd added it in, but obviously forgot. 2511 Q5 Guff model. The lightning steps 4, multi-angles LoRa, and the usual standard stuff with the instructions and so forth. It's, you know, you've got plasticky face again with Qwen, but it's good enough for what I need and for this round, and that gives me my character. And getting that close up, I don't bother with the body because I'll define the body. It's less important than the face, and you can define the body in text prompts much easier than you can define a face, body and clothing and so forth. So yeah, that basically gives me all the head angle shots I could need for basic angles. Not the highest quality, but good enough. And I would remove the background, but that can be simply done because you've got this passport photo and it's honoured it through each shot. And yeah, I can use this using that same method I just showed you earlier. Applying it here, using Critter to add the head in at roughly the correct angle, and then use this LoRa, the blend the image, correct the product, the man's perspective lighting, and integrate the man into the background. That should do a good enough job in most cases to be usable for then running videos. and using the reference image as a driving image. But what I'm going to have to look at next is middle frames, because sometimes the people lose their consistency if they're coming from a distance, and I'll run into some problems with that. But the middle frames does seem to work, but it can be a little bit finicky. But more on that at another time. That will do for today. Thank you very much. That was the base pipeline image. I will save this one up to the website, but first I'll post it on Patreon. I think you can get it from Benji, Future Thinker. I think that's where I got it from. So if you're in a rush to get that some other way, then my Patreon, get it there. The Patreon's free. It's not paid, by the way. So yeah, help yourself to that. And as of April 2026, that is my image pipeline, and it's likely to change within the next week. That's how it goes. Thank you very much.